The common assumption that's shared by both first and third degree price discrimination is that the monopolist is able to tell who the high demanders are and who the low demanders are. It is in this way that the monopolist can offer different prices to different consumers. But oftentimes, monopolists can't tell who's a high demand consumer and who's a low demand consumer. They might, for instance, only know that a certain fraction of the population are high demand consumers and a certain fraction are low demand consumers. When a consumer then comes up to the monopolist doesn't know which type of consumer she's encountering. Nevertheless, we will see here that it's still possible for the monopolist to price discriminate. The challenge the monopolist faces is to construct pricing policies such that high demand consumers will reveal themselves to be high demand consumers by the choices they make, and low demand consumers will reveal themselves to be low demand consumers by the choices they make. We begin again by assuming that there are high demand consumers with demand curve D1 and low demand consumers with demand curve D2, and we'll assume that there's an equal fraction of these in the population. We'll also continue with our assumption of a constant marginal cost of 10. We'll now think about what kind of pricing policies the monopolist might construct that will cause the two types of consumers to behave differently while maximizing the monopolist's profit, given the informational constraint that the monopolist doesn't know which consumer is high demand and which is low demand. We'll begin by imagining what the producer might do if she could perfectly price discriminate. In that case, she would want to sell 200 units to type 1 consumers and charge those consumers a price that's equal to the entire area under the demand curve up to 200 units. One way to do this is to charge type 1 consumers in 2 parts for the 200 units that we're selling them. The first part is to cover costs, 10 times 200 or $2,000. And the second part is the triangle that's formed by the area underneath the demand curve down to the green marginal cost curve up to $200. Similarly, if we could tell who the type 2 consumers were, we'd offer them a package of 100 units of output in 2 parts. First, covering costs, we charge them 10 times 100 or $1,000. And second, we take their consumer surplus, the area below the magenta demand curve, down to the marginal cost curve. We can now ask whether these 2 pricing packages would work if we offered them to type 1 and type 2 consumers without knowing which was which. Again, the packages are the following. We'd offer 200 units for $2,000 plus A plus B plus C, and we'd offer 100 units for $1,000 plus A. It's clear that the type 2 consumers will not want to buy the package intended for the type 1 consumers, but the type 1 consumers will, under these pricing policies, prefer to buy the package aimed at type 2 consumers. If they buy the package with 100 units, they would pay the price of $1,000 plus A and get consumer surplus of area B. Thus, if a monopolist who can't tell the difference between high and low demand consumers offers these 2 packages, she'll only sell the package with 100 units, because all the high demand consumers will act as if they were low demand consumers. That way they get consumer surplus B, whereas if they bought the package with 200 units of output, they'd get no consumer surplus at all.